Hello and welcome viewers, I'm Pia and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at the headlines this hour. A Russian missile strike hit Wisha Road, killing 1 person and injuring 5. According to regional emergency services, firefighters battled burning buildings as residents evacuated. Kazakhstan has criticized Ukraine for a drone strike on the Caspian Pipeline Consortium's Black Sea terminal, halting operations. The Foreign Ministry has called it the third attack on the civilian facility and has protested the targeting of critical infrastructure. The U.S. Navy vehicles have now patrolled southern Puerto Rico as President Trump has declared Venezuelan airspace closed in its entirety. Venezuela has condemned the move by the United States as a colonialist threat, while U.S. officials have stated that no operations were underway to enforce the closure. Activists in New York City protested near a GSA lot to stop ICE from departing for an immigration raid. President Trump has increased officer deployments nationwide, although most of those detained have no criminal convictions. Public anger has grown as residents mourn more than 128 victims of a deadly blaze at a high-rise in Hong Kong. Meanwhile, Beijing has warned against using the tragedy to stir unrest. 4 people have lost their lives and 10 others have been injured when gunfire erupted at a child's birthday party in Stockton in California. Police have stated that the incident may have been a targeted crime. An investigation is underway. Thousands have rallied in Manila against alleged embezzlement of billions of pesos meant for flood mitigation projects. Protesters have demanded accountability as investigators probe officials, contractors and lawmakers over unfinished quote-unquote host projects. Floods and landslides from cyclonic rains have killed more than 303 people in Sumatra. Around 80,000 have been evacuated and more than 279 remain missing. Hundreds are still stranded across 3 provinces in Indonesia amidst ongoing severe weather. Well, viewers, those are the headlines and our top focus. Kazakhstan has strongly criticized Ukraine following a drone attack on the Black Sea terminal of the Caspian Pipeline Consortium, or the CPC, which handles more than 1% of global oil production. Now, the CPC reported that operations were halted after a significant mooring at its terminal was damaged in the Ukrainian naval drone strike. Kazakhstan's foreign ministry has condemned the attack, calling it the third instance of aggression against this civilian facility, which is protected by international law. The ministry has also expressed its concern over what it described as a deliberate strike on critical infrastructure at the port of Novorossiysk. This incident has heightened tensions surrounding the safety of vital energy transport routes. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Gilbert Doctorow. He is a Russian affairs expert joining us from Brussels. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Ukraine now being criticized by Kazakhstan, no less, after the strike on this particular terminal that handles about 1% of the global oil flow. What do you make of these comments by the Kazakh Foreign Ministry, the fact that now one of the Central Asian nations has come out and condemned the strike openly?
Well, maybe 1% of global oil, but it is 80% of Kazakhstan's oil exports. So for Kazakhstan, this damage is extremely serious. There are alternative routes, and they will be used now in the coming days, weeks, and months, so long as it takes time to repair the damage, which apparently was substantial. I call out the fact that this is not the first strike by the Ukrainians against the pipeline that carries Kazakhstan oil across Russian territory into the Black Sea to a Russian port for export to world markets. This, however, is obviously much more successful and much more damaging. I also want to call out something else. You have stated this is a naval drone used by the Ukrainians. Let's be open about it. It is the Brits who are supplying Ukraine with the know-how and perhaps even with the equipment to carry out such strikes. So the question should come back to London. Why are they striking American assets in Kazakhstan?
Mhm. Interestingly, yes, you have pointed out this is not the first instance. This is, in fact, the third such instance. What impact could such attacks, if continued, have on the supply of oil and the stability of the markets or even the volatility?
Well, certainly it makes markets nervous when you have an event like this that is so disruptive of a major supplier. However, the regional importance is greater than the global oil market question. For the region, it is striking. It is remarkable that the Ukrainians have chosen to disrupt Kazakhstan oil flows. They also have done some peculiar things with respect to supplies of hydrocarbons reaching Hungary, but Russia-sourced. Here it's not Russia itself that is the victim. It is Kazakhstan and the American owners of the oil and of the pipe and part owners of the pipeline. So it is a very peculiar strike. Obviously, Ukraine is keen on being disruptive in the area and demonstrating that it can wreak havoc in the region if its interests are not respected as it goes into peace negotiations.
Indeed. Speaking of the negotiations, and of course, I'd like to digress a little bit from this particular strike itself. There is a Ukrainian delegation in the United States of America to, in fact, further the talks. We've seen discussions earlier in Geneva and Abu Dhabi as well. Amidst all of this, we're also expecting a meeting between Ukrainian President Zelensky and French President Emmanuel Macron. What are your expectations from this meeting? We did see that France has agreed to supply Rafales to Ukraine, but that's more of a long-term project. Can we also expect some announcement with regards to Ukraine's short-term security apparatus?
I think that Macron is looking for every opportunity to present himself as a European leader in providing for defense of Ukraine. And I imagine one of the subjects in his discussion with Zelensky will be the offer that he has made and the Brits have made, each to supply 5,000 troops to Ukraine as a safeguard, as a tripwire, to ensure that Ukraine is not attacked again after conclusion of peace. That was probably one of the top items. And I have to insist that Europe remains a possible spoiler in the peace negotiations, and that Europe is not helpless, as some people are saying, but Europe can fan the war and keep it going and keep the conflict going if the European leaders like Macron are not put in their place and made to understand that they cannot and should not interfere with what the United States is conducting very seriously as a peace effort.
Indeed, as you pointed out, Macron does have designs to project himself as, the voice of the Europeans as far as this war is concerned. He also has, interestingly, a visit to China lined up very, very shortly. He's likely to rake up the war itself. Although China does not directly supply any weapons to Russia, it has been supplying fiber optic cables, lithium-ion batteries, dual-use items mostly, which are then used by Russia to manufacture drones. China, as we know, is also the largest importer of Russian oil. So these are a couple of things he's likely to rake up. He's also looking at negotiating with them separately for an economic deal as well. How do you think this would go down with the Chinese?
Well, you're looking at substantive issues that would explain and justify Mr. Macron's trip to China. I would look at it differently. Mr. Macron has only 11% support among voters in France. That is the lowest level since Hollande, who was forced not to enter the electoral campaign for presidency upon the fact that he had such miserable ratings. Macron is despised in France. The only place where he can show himself off and claim the microphone is on foreign travel. In that sense, he is in line with Mr. Starmer, the Prime Minister of the UK, who is being roundly criticized at home and who may be unseated in London because he spends too little time at home, where his activities are not approved by most of the population, and spends a lot of time on foreign travel. So it is with Mr. Macron. The last place he wants to be is in Paris, because there he has to face the daily problems, the loss of 3 successive governments to opposition in parliament, and he has to answer questions of hostile reporters. When he travels abroad, as he is now, as you say, going to China, he can bask in the limelight. He can present himself as a global thinker and mover of events. That is all false, and I do not believe that he will achieve anything of significance in Beijing, because the Chinese know who he is.
Coming back to the peace deal itself and the war, I wanted to understand from you, although the amended draft has not been made public, we do know the first draft that was leaked did highlight that the US is looking at eventually lifting sanctions against Russia on a case-by-case basis, a reinduction of Russia into the augmented G8 as well. What are your expectations? Are these clauses that are likely to be retained? And what are your expectations from, the clause regarding Ukraine ceding territory? Would that also likely to be retained or amended in a certain manner?
I discount the value of the agreements reached between the United States and the negotiating team from Ukraine in Geneva a week ago. I believe that was political theater. Mr. Yermak's dismissal, his forced retirement, changes whole dynamics. But I want to call out that Mr. Trump is very serious about arriving at a peace in this war, more serious than anybody else, certainly more serious than Zelensky, and so I think this will surprise viewers, more serious than Mr. Putin is. And for that reason, I believe that the talks between the Russians and the Americans will proceed on the basis of the original 28-point plan and not on the basis of the revised 19-point plan arrived at after meeting with Yermak and the other members of the Ukrainian delegation in Geneva last week.
All right, so with that, I'd like to thank you for taking out time, of course, sharing your perspective and insights as far as these very crucial developments in the war and the peace process is concerned. On that note, viewers, we're shifting focus away from the war in Europe towards what's happening in the Caribbean. U.S. Navy vehicles have patrolled southern Puerto Rico as tensions rise with Venezuela. A landing craft air cushion was deployed near Ponce, southwest of San Juan. Earlier, U.S. President Trump stated that airspace over and around Venezuela should be considered closed in its entirety. He gave no details, but U.S. officials, at least reports are coming out, stating that they were unaware of any current operations to enforce this particular closure. Venezuela, of course, has condemned Trump's statement, calling it a colonialist threat and a violation of international law. The Trump administration has been weighing options against President Maduro, including covert CIA operations and military action, citing alleged drug trafficking links, which Maduro has outrightly denied. Many analysts say that the larger game plan of the United States of America is to carry out a regime change operation. Remember, the Maduro regime is not recognized by Washington, neither by the Trump administration now, or even the Biden administration earlier. With us on the broadcast is Major General Dr. Rajan Kochar, Senior Strategic and Defense Expert, joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for taking out time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Lots taken place over the last 24 hours as far as Venezuela is concerned. You know, just yesterday, we'd seen reports come in that Maduro and Trump apparently had a phone call last week. On one hand, he's keeping the diplomatic channels open. On the other, muscle flexing, in the Caribbean. What do you make of these fresh patrols? Also, in your assessment, is it likely that the United States will take military action against Venezuela? And if so, when?
Thank you for inviting me. I think it's a very interesting a situation which is developing in the Caribbeans now, and especially Puerto Rico, as well as Venezuela, because all these developments possibly are linked to each other.
Yes.
The US Navy has massively expanded their presence in the Caribbean region, and bases and deployments across and around Puerto Rico have been reactivated, I would say that. And especially the Roosevelt Roads Naval Station in Puerto Rico now serves as a strategic hub, hosting warships and functioning as a staging ground for operations. And in the broader US statements, what I've been reading is that this campaign labeled Operation Southern Spear is actually aimed at countering narco terrorist networks, especially those trafficking drugs from Venezuela and the Caribbean sea route. So I think this is a, a posturing being done by the Americans on the pretext of the narcotics trade, because America does not want to show to the world that it is a sort of an aggressive kind of a country who's interested to take over another country. So the presence of these naval vessels and amphibious groups, which America has mobilized in this area, including jets and drones, suggests that America retains an option of maritime interdiction in terms of projecting its regional power in this area if he is not satisfied with the way Venezuela elections will actually go on, and how this possibly political structure there will take shape. And that is why immense logistics and positioning, which is linked to the US strategic thrust, has been made in this region, because US wants to create a state of readiness in the case it wants to intervene in a perceived regional crisis in Venezuela. So as of now, I think the United States is suitably poised, uh, take a decision whenever it wants to take to intervene inside Venezuela, and as you mentioned, even a military action cannot be ruled out.
Indeed, if we are to go by US statements which are publicly available, they are stating that the crackdown is against narco-terror networks. But I also wanted to understand from you, are these networks then the only consideration? We did see the Trump administration designate the Cartel of the Suns as a terrorist organization, claiming that Maduro heads this. So there are questions that a lot of people have with regards to the larger game plan of the United States of America. Some of the analysts are pointing out that the US is not very happy as far as the vast oil reserves Venezuela possesses, the fact that it exports to China as well. So that's something that's not gone down well with the Americans. Analysts say that we could perhaps even see a regime change operation. Trump very publicly has stated that CIA operations have been authorized as well. Therefore, in your assessment, is the US solely acting as far as its consideration regarding the operations of these narco-terror networks are considered, or is there a larger plan as well?
Pia, I think there is a larger plan, because the United States does not mobilize in this manner, as we are seeing now, in case all its advanced aircrafts are there,
Yes.
the jets are there, the drones are there, the maritime assets are there, because it cannot be only related to narco-terrorism. So I tend to agree with the certain analysts, as you have actually mentioned, because there is a larger game plan, and a possibility of a regime change cannot be ruled out in Venezuela, especially when Venezuela has been entertaining the Chinese in doing their exploration and their mining activities here for oil. So I think America wants to reassert itself. America wants to reassert its hegemony because uh, Venezuela is quite close to America, and in terms of distance, in terms of maritime distance also. And in times to come, uh, America will not like to see a Chinese influence in this area. So I think China is one important factor which has prompted Donald Trump to take this action, and therefore this kind of a pressure will be there on Venezuela now to toe the American line. And in case this American line is not towed, then I think we may see a possibility of a regime change, and with the intervention of the military action by America in the near future.
Indeed, you've pointed to the mobilization. It's not just F-35s that have been deployed, but even the largest aircraft carrier of the United States. It's most advanced, the Gerald Ford. So in all of this, how could we expect the Latin American nations to react? We have seen so far that Colombia has outrightly rejected what the United States is doing. There was Gustavo Petro had made some rather public remarks. Mexico, though not as public, Sheinbaum has hinted to where her administration currently stands. She does face a lot of domestic issues with her riots, but she's not attending the Summit of Americas, which is going to take place most likely on the 4th of December in the Dominican Republic, because Venezuela was not invited. On the other hand, we've seen Trinidad and Tobago that lies just next to Venezuela. It's hosted U.S. warships on its shores as well. It's been rather open as far as the American administration is concerned, but its statements, its public statements, are also very balanced diplomatically. So how could we expect the Latin American nations to react at large?
I think no nation wants interference into its own internal affairs. And territorial sovereignty is the right of each country. And no country, the smallest to smallest of the country, if you talk about small nations like Bahamas, the uh, Puerto Ricos, the El Salvadors, and all these small countries, I don't think they are going to welcome this kind of hegemonistic, I will repeat this word, hegemonistic attitude of the United States. And therefore, what is happening in Puerto Rico, Venezuela, I think all these actions of the Americans are not being viewed in a very, very favorable manner by these countries, though they may have excellent relations with the United States because their dependencies are on the United States. The imports are from the United States. The sustenance is from the United States. But they're not going to welcome this kind of approach from the Americans. And therefore, I see that if United States does not indulge in these kind of actions, it would be in the larger interest of humanity and peace in this area.
All right, sir. I'd like to request you to stay back with us as we're tracking some further updates. In Stockton, in California, a shooting at a family gathering has left 4 people dead and 10 others injured. The incident occurred on the 29th of November at a child's birthday party near the 1900 block of Lucille Avenue. Police has received reports of the shooting shortly before 6 p.m. local time, confirming that 14 individuals were struck by gunfire. The San Joaquin County Sheriff's Office has described the attack as a very active and ongoing investigation. He's indicated that it may have been a targeted incident as well. Authorities have not yet released any details about a suspect, but Stockton's Vice Mayor Jason Lee has expressed his concern, vowing to push for answers as law enforcement continues to probe this tragic event. On that note, viewers, we're shifting focus to South America. Tensions are escalating at the Chile-Peru border, where migrants, mostly from Venezuela, remain stranded after trying to leave Chile following controversial remarks made by Chile's far-right presidential candidate Jose Antonio Cast. On the 20th of November, Cast, who is leading in the presidential race at the moment, vowed that if elected, undocumented migrants would face detention and expulsion. This has sparked a surge of people seeking to cross into Peru. Now, according to Peruvian authorities, at least 100 migrants have arrived at the border hoping to continue their journey. However, Peru has responded by declaring a state of emergency along its border with Chile, citing concerns over unauthorized migration. Peruvian President Jose Eri has stated that the measure was necessary to generate tranquility and control the flow of migrants, but it has led to a bottleneck at the border crossing in Arica in Chile, where many migrants have now set up makeshift shelters along the highway. Frustration is mounting as people like Venezuelan migrant Ramon Valero have expressed their dismay, stating that they are trying to return to Venezuela but are being blocked by Peru's tightened border security as well. Meanwhile, Chilean authorities have downplayed the situation, with the General Jose Soto now assuring that there have been no major problems at the northern border. The uncertainty surrounding the fate of these migrants has only grown. With the political rhetoric surrounding immigration intensifying in both countries, the situation at the border remains tense as thousands of people wait for a resolution to the crisis that leaves them caught between both nations, which are now taking a hard stance on undocumented migration. Still with us on the broadcast is Major General Dr. Rajan Kochar. Interesting developments coming in. The migrants now sandwiched practically between Chile and Peru, both who have now taken a hardline stance against illegal immigration as well. A lot of these are Venezuelan migrants, interestingly. They often engage in the informal sector, provide low-cost labor as well. But in your assessment, it's not apart from the rise of the right-wing rhetoric, what sort of factors might have justified declaring, on Peru's side, the state of emergency, on Chile's side as well, with their leading presidential race candidate? What sort of social factors could have triggered this?
You see, what happens is we are seeing the United States also tightening its migration laws. You see, every country wants to create employment for its own people. And when migrants come inside, the balance is disturbed. Secondly, the security issues also come along, because when the migrants come, there are a large number of security incidents within the country, as we saw in America of the Afghani guy who shot dead a security person, and then America had to enforce a blanket ban on visas for the entire people of Afghanistan. So a similar kind of environment we see in these countries also, because the state of emergency basically what is being propagated is to prevent unauthorized entry and to avert what the Peruvian government wants to describe as threats to public safety, and especially in the border region. And but the larger point here is, if both the countries are not going to accept these people, and if Chile will say that it won't accept you allow anybody from Peru to come inside, and same with the other country, then where do these people go?
Yes.
So that is the larger issue, and it is now shifting from a security problem to a humanitarian problem, because and I think America's role also contributes to this situation, because in Venezuela, if these people are trying to flee from there, there is an issue as far as the border is also concerned, because the Americans are also is near the border, and they're also tightening up the situation there. So I think this presence of US also is a contributing factor in the Caribbean today, and it could also affect this migration and the trafficking issues also to a larger this thing. And my last comment is that though the government is has a convergence as far as the security framing in Puerto Rico is concerned, but here I can see a larger actually link on the border management between these two countries, because in case this migrant issue is not tackled by both the countries, it can become a larger humanitarian concern and far more important than the security concern.
All right, Major General Kocher, with that, I'd like to thank you for taking out time, of course, putting all of that into perspective for our viewers and providing your insights. On that note, viewers, we're tracking some rather tragic news coming in from Australia. We're learning that a deadly mid-air collision occurred near Sydney. 2 light planes were involved, with one crashing in bushland near Wedderburn. The solo pilot of that plane has lost their life. The second plane landed safely and its pilot was unharmed. Emergency responders recovered the body of the deceased pilot of the first plane. The Australian Transport Safety Bureau is investigating the collision, which involved 2 Van RV-7 aircrafts. The planes were part of a 4-aircraft formation returning to Wedderburn Airport when the accident occurred. We're tracking further developments from Australia. For a second consecutive day, activists from organisations like Rising Tide and Greenpeace disrupted operations at Australia's largest coal export ports. The port of Newcastle, the largest bulk shipping port on Australia's east coast, was blocked by thousands of protesters, with hundreds paddling into shipping lanes with kayaks. 3 Greenpeace activists boarded a coal ship near the port, stopping its operations. A spokesperson from the Port of Newcastle has now stated that operations will resume from Monday, that is tomorrow, as scheduled. According to Rising Tide, over 100 protesters were arrested, and while the police have not corroborated this so far, they have stated that 21 people have been detained for marine-related offences. Viewers, we're tracking developments from the Philippines. We're now learning that thousands of Filipinos have rallied in Manila to denounce alleged large-scale corruption involving tens of millions of dollars meant for the flood mitigation projects. The rally came as investigators from various agencies, including the Senate, have stated that public work officials, construction executives, and several lawmakers diverted funds into the ghost projects that were never completed. Meanwhile, some protesters have responded. Let's listen in to what they had to say.
5 buwan na mula nung pumutok ang flood control scam, wala pa ring nakukulong na malaking tao. Puro miron lang ang naaresto doon sa sinasabi ni Ombudsman Remulla na at least 10% ng Congress ay sangkot sa anomalya sa flood control. Isa pa lang ang may kaso sa pagkakaalam natin at may warrant of arrest. Ang mga senators and congressmen na involved hanggang ngayon hindi pa rin nakukulong.
Kitang-kita naman na hinog na nga yung galit ng mamamayan. Kumbaga ito na yung tamang panahon para pagkunutan ng noo itong mga nangyayaring korupsyon. Kung kaya't ako bilang isang kabataan nga, syempre galit.
Well, viewers, on that note, we dip into a quick short break. Stay tuned on NewsX World for more.